The story of his brother, who had been raised not by his own blood child for 10 years, when he learned that his wife had cheated on him. Families are complicated, but mine just took the cake. You think you know someone, think you've got a handle on the ins and outs of family life, and then something completely out of left field blindsides you. It all started about 3 months ago. My brother, let's call him Max, had been acting strange. Quiet, withdrawn, not his usual blunt, sarcastic self. I thought maybe it was just stress from work, or that he and his wife Nina were having one of their classic arguments over something trivial, like whether to buy organic or regular bananas. They've always been that couple, bickering over small things, then making up just as quickly. Then came the bombshell, a paternity test, a random paternity test. Apparently, without telling anyone, Max had taken it upon himself to get a DNA test done on their son, Leo, who was 10 years old. Why? Who knows? Maybe it was paranoia, maybe it was gut instinct, or maybe he just watched too many crime dramas. Either way, the results were in, and they weren't pretty. Max wasn't Leo's father. Yep, 10 years. A full decade of raising a boy he thought was his, only to find out he wasn't. And in typical Max fashion, the moment he got the results, he went full-on dramatic mode, packed his bags, stormed out of the house, and moved in with our mum. The news hit the family like a sledgehammer. I mean, Leo was like my little buddy. I've been his cool Aunt Julia since the day he was born, and now suddenly I'm supposed to forget he exists. That was Max's suggestion, or rather demand. He wanted us to act like Leo was never part of the family, as if he could just be erased from our lives like a bad mark on a chalkboard. The thing is, I understood Max was hurt. He was devastated, angry, all the emotions you can imagine. But this wasn't just about him. It wasn't just about Nina either, though she had certainly contributed to the mess. This was about Leo, an innocent 10-year-old boy who had no idea what was going on, who just loved his dad, his grandma, and me, his aunt. And now, Max wanted us all to pretend like that love, like Leo himself, didn't matter anymore. Nina wasn't exactly the family favourite, not by a long shot. She had this cool, almost indifferent attitude that never quite fit in with our more emotionally loud family. Don't get me wrong, she was smart, successful, and in a lot of ways the perfect match for Max, at least in terms of intellect. But emotionally, she had this icy vibe that made you feel like she was tolerating you rather than enjoying your company. It turned out that Nina, 10 years ago, had an affair, or in her words, a momentary lapse of judgment. The timing lined up with when Leo was conceived. To make matters worse, she admitted that she always suspected that Leo might not be Max's son, but she had chosen to keep that little detail to herself. Because, as she put it didn't matter. Max was the one raising him, and in her mind, that made him the father. Max didn't agree. The irony is, Max isn't exactly a beacon of marital fidelity either. I mean, the guy has never been an angel, and rumours about his own escapades have floated around our family for years. But the thing about Max is that while he's a bit of a mess, he's always taken fatherhood seriously. Leo was his world, his little sidekick. They went to baseball games together, watched the same dumb action movies, and even had matching fishing rods for their annual fishing trips. So when Max found out that Leo wasn't biologically his, it crushed him. It wasn't just about the betrayal, it was the fact that the foundation he'd built his life on, fatherhood, was now shaky at best. In true Max fashion though, instead of talking things out, he went nuclear. He moved out, left Nina, and cut ties with Leo, all in one fell swoop. And that's when the family drama really kicked off. Our mother, bless her, didn't know how to handle any of it. Max showed up at her door with a suitcase, saying he couldn't live with Nina anymore. Mum was confused but supportive, as she always is, though she later told me she felt blindsided. When Max finally explained what had happened, she was horrified. Not just at Nina, but at the whole situation. Still, she loved Leo. She couldn't just flip a switch and stop being his grandma. But Max was adamant. "He's not my son," he told her over and over. "He's not your grandson either." It didn't sit right with me. How could he just abandon Leo? I tried to talk to Max, to reason with him, but he wouldn't hear it. "You don't get it, Julia," he snapped. "He's not your nephew. We need to cut ties with this whole shameful episode." Shameful episode? Is that what Leo was now? A mistake? A footnote in Max's life? I couldn't believe how cold my brother was being. I reminded him that Leo had no idea about the paternity test, that he was just a kid who loved his family. Max didn't care. He was hurt, betrayed, and angry, and that anger was spilling over into everything. Things escalated when Max issued an ultimatum. "You have to choose," he said, his voice hard and unforgiving. "It's either me or Leo. You can't have both." I was dumbfounded. "You're serious? You're going to make me choose between my brother and my nephew? A 10-year-old kid who has done nothing wrong?" Max didn't flinch. "You're either with me or you're against me." Well, that did it. I chose Leo. Max was furious, to say the least. He stormed out of my apartment the night I told him I wasn't going to cut Leo out of my life. "Fine," he spat. "If you want to side with a little bastard over your own brother, don't expect me to stick around." And just like that, he was gone. I didn't hear from him for weeks. Our mother tried to play peacemaker, of course. She called me, half crying, asking why I couldn't just support Max during this difficult time. But I wasn't budging. I love my brother, but I wasn't going to abandon Leo just because Max's pride had been hurt. It wasn't long before word of the family drama started to leak out into our extended family. Our cousins, aunts, and uncles began taking sides too. Half of them thought Max was right to cut ties. After all, Nina had lied to him for 10 years, and that kind of betrayal is hard to forgive. But the other half, including me, couldn't stomach the idea of punishing Leo for something he had no control over. To make matters worse, Nina's family got involved. Her parents, who live in the same town, were devastated by the news. They tried to talk to Max, but he wasn't interested. As far as he was concerned, their daughter had ruined everything, and he wanted nothing to do with any of them. Meanwhile, Leo remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around him. He knew something was wrong. After all, his dad had suddenly stopped coming home. But Nina had told him that his dad was just staying at Grandma's for a while. Leo, being the sweet, trusting kid he is, bought the story. But I knew it wouldn't be long before he started asking questions. Then, as if the situation wasn't messy enough, a new player entered the scene. Sam. Sam was the guy Nina had slept with 10 years ago, the biological father. I didn't know much about him, other than that he had briefly dated Nina before she married Max. He'd been out of the picture for years, but when he got wind of the paternity drama, thanks to a mutual friend of his and Nina's, he reached out. It was a weird situation. Sam didn't want to cause trouble, but he felt guilty. "I didn't know," he told Nina when they met for coffee one afternoon. "If I had known Leo was mine, I would have been there for him." This complicated things even more. Nina, for all her faults, wasn't a heartless person. She loved Leo, and the idea of keeping him from his biological father now seemed cruel. So she started meeting with Sam, discussing the possibility of him having a role in Leo's life. She hadn't told Leo anything yet, but she was considering it. Max, when he found out, went ballistic. He called me in the middle of the night, ranting about how Nina was letting some stranger into Leo's life. The hypocrisy of the situation was staggering. Max, who wanted nothing to do with Leo, was now furious that someone else might step in and play the father role he had so easily abandoned. While all of this was unfolding, my relationship with Leo grew stronger. He started spending more time at my place, especially on weekends. We'd watch movies, go to the park, or just hang out. He asked about his dad, of course, but I stuck to Nina's story. Dad was at Grandma's for a bit, sorting some things out. But the cracks were starting to show. One day, out of the blue, Leo asked me, Aunt Julia, does Dad still love me? My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. I wanted to hug him and tell him everything was fine, that his dad still loved him, that everything would go back to normal soon. But I couldn't lie to him, not completely. Of course your dad loves you, I said softly. He's just going through some stuff right now, but none of it is your fault, okay? Leo nodded, but I could tell he wasn't satisfied with my answer. Kids are smart. They know when things aren't right, even if they can't fully understand what's happening. Around this time, Sam started showing up more frequently. He came to one of Leo's soccer games, sitting at a distance, watching quietly. He didn't introduce himself, didn't try to force anything. But I saw the way he looked at Leo, like a man who had missed out on 10 years of his child's life and didn't know how to fix it. Nina, to her credit, was handling things better than I expected. She wasn't trying to force Sam into the picture, but she wasn't shutting him out either. She seemed genuinely torn between wanting to protect Leo from the truth and giving him the opportunity to know his biological father. And that's when things took an unexpected twist. Just when I thought Max was done with the family, something changed. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the realization that he couldn't erase 10 years of love for Leo. Or maybe it was the sight of Sam slowly inching his way into Leo's life. Whatever it was, Max came back. He showed up at my apartment one evening, looking disheveled and exhausted. "I need to talk," he muttered, collapsing onto my couch. I didn't say anything, just sat down next to him and waited. "I can't stop thinking about him," Max admitted, his voice cracking. "Leo, I miss him, Julia, but every time I think about going back, I remember that he's not mine, and it kills me." I took a deep breath. "Max, he's been your son for 10 years. Biology doesn't change that. You're the one who raised him. You're the one he loves. That doesn't just disappear." Max didn't say anything for a while. Then, in a barely audible whisper, he said, "I don't want Sam to take my place." That's when I knew. Max wasn't just hurt. He was scared. Scared that Sam would come in and take the role of father, a role Max had cherished, even if he didn't realize it until now. "You don't have to lose Leo," I told him gently, "but you need to be honest with him, and with yourself." A week later, Max took the first step toward healing. He called Nina, and they had a long, difficult conversation. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't perfect, but by the end of it, they had agreed to co-parent Leo. Sam, after talking with both Max and Nina, decided to take a step back for the time being, allowing Max and Leo to rebuild their relationship without interference. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There were still plenty of unresolved emotions, plenty of hurt to work through. But it was a start. Max slowly began spending time with Leo again, starting with a trip to the park, then a movie night at my place. Leo, for his part, was thrilled. He didn't care about the complicated adult drama swirling around him. He just wanted his dad back. And while Max and Nina's marriage was over, they had both agreed to put Leo first. As for me, I stood by my decision. I didn't regret choosing Leo. In fact, I felt more connected to him than ever. Life is messy, complicated, and filled with unexpected twists. But in the end, family, however you define it, is what matters most. And sometimes it's the family you choose that makes all the difference.